Let's take a look at some charts and information on Algorand for Brave New Coin. So I've had quite a few people ask me about this one lately, possibly bots, I don't know. I always assume if there's a bunch of air quotes people asking me about a coin, it's probably bot activity, but if you're one of these people who did ask me about Algo and are not a bot, I apologize. So Algo is a proof of stake coin. They call it the world's first blah 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 blah. It's a proof of stake coin. It's an ETH competitor in my eyes. I don't know why I think of Algo as mainly a stablecoin, algorithmic stablecoin chain, but apparently it's more than that. They have a conference coming up end of the month. That'll probably have some effect on the price, kind of like everything does in a bull market. If Ripple has a conference in a bull market, things go off. Solana just had their conference and the coin did reasonably well. This is tradable on Binance and Kraken, so it's available to people. I always like looking at the Twitter accounts of these projects to see if there's anything that sticks out recently. I haven't covered this one since February. I always get nervous when they're touting people instead of ideas and use cases. Lots of conference stuff. That's also a red flag for me. So-and-so speaking at a conference. Cool. But ultimately, what really moves the needle is use cases, DeFi stuff. You know, they talk a lot about NFTs here lately. This is just a quick initial pass that I usually do. But if you want to dig deeper, it's always worth going to the website and seeing, okay, what do they say they do versus what do they actually get activity for, right? Because you can say you do all sorts of things, like ADA does all sorts of things allegedly, but what do people actually use it for? Typically not always the same. So they have smart contracts, they have assets kind of like SNX or synths, similar to that, atomic transfers. And this I'd never heard of. Rekeying, solve operational inefficiencies, blah, blah, blah. You know, I don't really care at the end of the day. It's important if you're researching this stuff that you know what it is and what it can do. It looks like potentially an ENS equivalent-ish, you know, naming service. Not exactly sure, but it can do stuff and things cool. You know, it's basically ETH or any other proof of stake chain with virtual machine compatibility, smart contract compatibility, stablecoins. Tether uses it. You know, the list goes on. It's kind of just lost in the sea of proof of stake things. Here's a list of their assets currently on Algo. You can see all sorts of weird stock shares and synthetic derivative stuff. Here's Tether. USDC also uses Algorand. There they are. So yes, they have stablecoin uses on Algo. Not as big as Tron, not as big as ETH, probably bigger than Omni. You'd have to look at the official numbers for NFT grocery store coupon. You'd have to look at the official numbers for all this stuff. But is that really going to matter at the end of the day? I don't think so. That's why I'm not going to go deep into it. But it's just worth knowing what they do, what can they do, what are people actually using this for. Ultimately, if I'm Tether, or if I'm USDC, or if I'm some central bank digital currency and I want to use some chain for some reason, I don't know, you want the lowest cost, most secure chain. At the end of the day, you don't really care. Something with tons of history and activity and security typically is a better choice. You know, not something super new, something that's been battle tested, been out there for a while. But something like ETH, where the fees are just so high for the average person, if I'm a stablecoin issuer, I'm definitely looking to other avenues and revenues because that's going to attract more volume from people trying to move stablecoins around, which is why Tether has replenished inventories on Tron lately in the multi-billions because it's much cheaper to send it through Tron than ETH. Do I think Tron's a better blockchain than ETH? No. But ETH is also broken in that the fees are way too high. So if Algo can get some of that market share, keep fees low, that's a substantial use case that's sort of tacked on to Algo. Is it going to matter for the price of the token? Not so sure, but it gives the chain a use case, and then people start to say, oh, what else can I do with Algo? Devs start to come, right? It's like how a wolf shapes an ecosystem. You know, it eats the prey eat the grasses shift the river. You know, that famous gift that I'm thinking of all this stuff starts to happen once this keystone species like stablecoin shift to other chains for various reasons. And I always like to look at, did they do an ICO? How much did they raise? They raised a modest amount, nothing super crazy, but they had seed rounds, venture rounds, $60 million ICO, which at the time is okay. It's modest. I forget what I thought something happened with their stablecoin, something I can't remember. Honestly, not important at this moment. It's so far in the rear view that historically it's important and relevant, but right now no one's going to care. And here's the breakdown of how it was split. So it looks like 55% between sort of insiders, and then airdrops 45%. And then the supply schedule is also important to look at. Are we in the middle of some sort of massive unlock for anybody holding a bunch of coins? And as we approach November, December, nothing too crazy as far as stepping up in the total circulating supply. You can see it's around 4 to 5 billion, according to Masari here. I also like to look at the staking rewards numbers according to stakingrewards.com. I just like them because they sort of aggregate all this data for me. But participating 48%, which is about average for proof of stake coins. The adjusted reward after inflation is negative. So this coin has to remain bullish in order for people to logically want to stake on this. Very similar to Tezos. I only buy Tezos and stake it if I think it's bullish. If it's not bullish, I do neither, because the reward is minuscule, right? And that's the case for most coins where you're better off just lending USDC. Tezos, just as an example, it's less than 1% adjusted, right? And they have 75% participating. But you can go through all of these. I'm not like advertising for stakingrewards.com or anything, but you can go through all of these and see what are the adjusted rewards, what makes sense, what's the most bullish. I mean, that's what I would be doing if I was a staker, if I was big on staking. I just stake something if the technicals look good and I'm buying it and I am able to stake it. I don't go out of my way personally to stake anything anywhere unless it's already on the exchange. I'm not exactly a shepherd of proof of staking in that regard. It's just another avenue to earn interest on what you already have for most people. Transaction metrics over the past year or 2 years, transactions definitely increasing pretty substantially. Algo transactions, according to Algo Explorer, is at 3.6 million, which is a mega all-time high for them. I think transactions per second is a garbage metric. Transactions per hour, garbage metric. For proof of stake blockchains, you're going to see multi-million transactions per day typically. I mean, EOS has always been in the millions, right? Has that really mattered for the token? No, it hasn't, right? Look at the EOS price. So as transaction counts are rising, you typically see a rising price. So to see this match the price currently where it sits, which I'll get to in a second, leads me to believe that this will have pretty decent bullish continuation because it's seeing a significant uptick in on-chain activity. It's always worth looking at the top accounts on proof of stake coins because they typically do the most staking. I don't know how validators work on Algo. I couldn't find that information. I'm not the most knowledgeable about this chain, but it looks like Binance holds a bunch, Kraken holds a bunch, and then a bunch of random anonymous addresses hold a bunch. I assume some of these are exchanges, assume some of these are VCs, assume some of these are capturing the proof of stake interest to some degree. And then you always get into trouble when, Stellar got into this issue of we're collecting interest on tokens we issued. At least I assume that this is the case here. Maybe they're not. It says they're not participating, so good on them for actually not participating in the proof of stake incentives. But some chains sort of double dip where they both issued the token and they're participating in proof of stake. So ultimately they are the governance mechanism. But it looks like for Algo's sake, they aren't participating there. So that's what you want to see. You want them out of it. If it's truly going to be decentralized, you don't want it to be a Neo situation where they have 3 validators and they're all Neo validators, right? Then it's just another centralized ledger at that point. If we look at Algorand on Google Trends, Algorand, that's hard to say. Not transaction, but Google Trends have perked up a little bit here. Again, this is what you want to see. If you're bullish, you want to see activity on chain. You want to see activity in searches and Google Trends. You want to see volume picking up. You want to see bullish continuation patterns. I don't care about a conference. I just don't. I don't care about any of the other junk going on. Just show me the data on chain and I'll take it from there. This to me looks good enough where, the price is basically consolidating at all-time highs, and I certainly expect this to go higher. I really don't need to know deeply what's going on the proof of stake side of things. And just for a recap, historically, it's good to see TA sort of play out as you'd expect on backtesting. So for example, if you see a triple bottom, if you see multiple inverted head and shoulders fractals, if you see all of that play out, that gives me confidence that in the future, if I'm seeing TA or strong chart patterns or something, that it's going to play out as expected. So this had all sorts of resistance levels on the way up, broke all of them, reconsolidated, returned back to the previous local high here at 68 cents, and has bounced since then. Bullish 5200 cross above all the volume resistance. Do I think Algorand's a new paradigm? No. Do I care anything about the proof of stake? Not really. I'm just looking at technicals here. This thing looks good for higher highs, somewhere between 3 and 350 on the next leg up. So that's with by the end of the year. For some people that's going to be a conservative move, but I'm more about the high conviction plays anyway. And this thing looks good for higher highs to me. You could argue some sort of ascending triangle or flag, pennant, I don't know, whatever you want to call this. Definitely has a bullish bias. The cloud also likes this. It has a pending bullish TK recross with price above cloud, the most bullish signal in the cloud system that says things have reconsolidated on the bullish side of the cloud and it's ready for another move to the upside. Now this may just crisscross over and over and over again, fizzle out, whatever. I don't care. The cloud doesn't care. All it's telling you is now's a good time to consider a long position again because there's a strong bullish continuation bias here. If this fails, what you look for failure criteria is just lower lows, right? There's very clearly a diagonal here, very clearly horizontal here. If it starts to waver below that, below the cloud, below 160, then that bias is over, that expectation is over. But right now, as we sit, this looks good for higher highs, definitely. Against BTC, much less rosy of a picture in that this thing has really only ranged since 2019. VPVR tells you at 2,500 sats or whatever that is, most of the volume has just been here the entire time. So against BTC, you're not really making any major moves unless this thing really is above 5.5. It's had 3 chances to break that. It hasn't. Even most recently, it didn't. So in this case, for me, you're either trading the range, buy the low, sell the high, or you're waiting for this to break the range highs a 4th time, because this is the no man's land between 4K and 5K. So I wouldn't want to be long in there either. I would definitely want to be long when it's at a new multi-year high. And I definitely don't want to be holding it when it's range bound. So on the USD pair, it looks great. On the BTC pair, not so much. And on the ETH pair, this thing is just basically down only since listing. This is an actual pair on Kraken too. So you can see where the real volume is, where the VPVR levels are. So I don't expect miracles against ETH either. So on the USD pair, looks fine. BTC and ETH pairs, progressively less bullish. And on-chain metrics look great. As far as the fundamental side of things beyond that, not so sure. But to me, technicals rule at the end of the day anyway. Lastly, let me just mention the ETH-BTC fund and DeFi portfolio. I trade for Techme Capital Enzyme.finance, a non-custodial portfolio management tool where you can send Ether, USDC, or just watch what I'm doing. You can see everything, including share price, performance, AUM. You can zoom in, zoom out here and what's going on. You can look at allocation. You can look at yield, generating vaults here on Comp, on Aave, on Yearn. You can see all the trades I'm doing as well in the trades tab down below. That's all I have for this one. Like, dislike, comment, share, subscribe, and happy trading.